This is Chad Kalhagen, and I just got a new phone, and I am really blown away by this. Just picked this up at Best Buy, 50 bucks, and I had to do a review on it because honestly, I feel like this is quite literally the best bang for your buck right now for a low-end smartphone that actually doesn't suck. So let's get into it. All right, from what I can tell, this phone currently is only for sale at Best Buy, but I had read somewhere that it's supposedly going to be available in the near future at Walmart and Target as well. Um, let's get into the specs here. It's got 7.0 Android Nougat, got a Qualcomm MSM 8917 Snapdragon 425, which is a 64-bit processor running at 1.4 gigahertz, quad core with the Adreno 308 GPU, 16 gigs of onboard storage, 2 gigabytes of RAM, very buttery smooth, never had any lagging or stuttering. And to be honest with you, from what I can see, if you'll notice when you scroll back and forth, that Google search bar stays with you. When you go to the Play Store, it's not the Google Now launcher, but honestly, it basically is. I like the Google Now launcher. I just could go without the search bar following me everywhere I scroll to, but I mean, no big deal. Let's see here. 71% screen to body ratio, 5.5-inch IPS screen, 1280 by 720 resolution, and it does have an ambient light sensor, so you're able to use that adaptive brightness to save you some battery. And also, it's got a multicolor LED notification indicator light, which I think is awesome. It's a deal breaker for me when phones do not have an LED notification light. I mean, unless you get into AMOLED screens, and then there's ways around it, but with just a standard IPS screen, TFT, whatever, like, you really need a notification light. So I really appreciate them including that. One thing I should probably do is kind of show you around the phone. So let's see here on this side. Hopefully you can see. We've got the volume rocker. Opposite side, you've got the power key. On the top, headphone jack. And then on the bottom, you've got the micro USB. The only microphones that I have seen on here are, you're not going to be able to see them, but down in this bottom part here in the bezel, there's 3 holes for the microphone, which I am assuming are also used for the camera. Although, you know what? I do see above the... So, my bad. Above the camera there, I do see a microphone. So, that must be the microphone they're using for the camera. And obviously, you got the flash. Rear camera, 8 megapixels. Front camera, 5 megapixels. And honestly, these cameras are good. I was not expecting them to be so decent at this price point, but honestly, even in low light, I think you're going to be surprised. Because that's usually the main thing, is like all cameras are decent in just the regular, better light conditions. But when you get into low light with this thing, honestly, it's not going to let you down. Within reason. This is not a flagship device. So keep that in mind. However, this is going to beat most other budget Android devices. I can assure you there. According to CPUX, this has USB host capabilities, which honestly to me are pretty sweet. Especially in the budget range. Of course, that's totally washed out in the video, but in the budget range, you really don't always find that. So I appreciate that. It also mentioned USB accessories, so I don't know if that has to do with like hooking up like a mouse or a flash drive. I have no idea. The LTE bands this phone uses are 2, 4, 5, 12, and 30. So definitely all of the AT&T bands for Cricket that you could possibly need. One complaint that I definitely had with this is the fact that, of course, this is like not hardly showing up. Here you go. That looks better. The File Explorer in Android Nougat is really good, actually. I like it quite a bit. However, they do not give you a shortcut to the File Explorer. So you either have to, go into your settings, and then go into storage, and then go down to Explore to get in there, which to me is like, dude, that's way too many steps. So I kind of searched around online, and I was able to make this File Explorer shortcut, put right on the desktop. And what I did was I went to the Google Play Store and I downloaded Shortcut Maker for Documents UI. And that it's free, no ads or anything, works like a charm. And that's all that it's actually for. So once you make the shortcut, you can just delete the app, because you're literally not going to use it for anything else. But very cool. So definitely do that. Anybody with Android Nougat, I would recommend doing that, because that's just too many steps. Like, you got to be able to get in there quick. That's ridiculous. So, but beyond that, the Explorer itself is fantastic, and at least that's a very easy workaround. Let's see here. It's got a 2,500 milliampere hours lithium ion battery. And the battery lasts very well. I have no complaints about the battery life, and I'm sure the adaptive brightness is just kind of helping that even more so. And that's another thing, another plus with the notification light. Now, by default, I believe I remember seeing that this phone had like, as a default setting, here's the speaker, by the way, and we'll talk about that in just a second. As a default setting, this phone, I think, and it was probably an Android Nougat thing, was offering to have the screen wake up when I get notifications. And honestly, with the notification light, that's not necessary. You can just watch for the flashing light, and you're going to waste a lot less battery that way. So definitely another plus with the notification light. You notice they've got the buttons reversed. They've got the home key in the middle, and these are physical buttons, physical capacitive, I think is how you describe those. But they and they do not light up. So kind of like the Samsung lower end devices, they've got the buttons that don't light up. But one thing this has that Samsung even does not do in the lower end devices is they at least have haptic feedback, which, man, does that piss me off when I'm going to push my buttons and I'm not getting that haptic feedback. Like, I really like the reassurance, that it's accepting the command. So very much appreciate that. But yeah, you got the back key over here, recent apps key on that side. So just make sure you don't get confused, because the first couple times I used it, admittedly, I did get a little tripped up by that. This does have a nice and loud speaker on the back. However, they put this little nub on here probably to just try to make the phone not quite sit all the way flat, to not mute the speaker as much, I'm sure. And honestly, if you're putting it on the table, that is one of the few complaints I have about the phone. I mean, it does mute the speaker a bit, but honestly, any rear-facing speaker, you're going to have to worry about that. But honestly, if this was in your pocket, which is going to probably be most of the time, you're not going to have to worry about that too much. So as long as your notifications and ringtone are turned up loud enough, which why would they not be if you're trying to hear them, you're going to be fine. So really not a big deal. The call quality I've found on this is very good. A lot of times on these low-end devices, I've found that they kind of neglect the the calling features. I think on these low-end phones, a lot of times they're really kind of assuming, and they're probably right in most cases, honestly, that a lot of the people using the phone are going to be like a kid that's going to be texting and emailing and social network and stuff a lot more often than they're going to be placing and receiving calls. And while they're not entirely wrong about that, when you do use it to place calls, I mean, dude, you got to have some reasonably decent quality. And honestly, this phone sounds great. The test calls that I made, the person on the other end said that my voice sounded great, very clear. So, very, very good. Coolpad really just another thing, they paid attention to that detail. And speaking of details, this phone is very thin. Considering that it has a removable battery, by the way, I don't remember if I mentioned when I talked about the battery, it is removable. The back comes off and you can take it out so you can carry either a spare battery with you, which honestly, with the way this thing handles battery, I don't really think you're going to need to do that. But if, obviously if you're really intensive doing a lot of videos, then okay, maybe you'll need to do that. And it's nice to have the option. And plus, another thing, I mean, yeah, I know it's a $50 phone, but to me, this matters. If I want to keep this phone for a couple of years and the internal battery starts to kind of take a nosedive, which they always do after a while. With this, you don't have to worry about that. So you can just replace the battery. And I get it, a lot of people would argue, well, it's a food stamp, throwaway phone, whatever. But honestly, in my opinion, all phones should ideally have a removable battery, because what if you have an error? You can pop that battery out, no big deal. I don't foresee you having anything like that on this phone because it runs so well, but you never know. Things can happen. And I feel like you shouldn't have to throw the phone away or dissect it to get more life out of it, replace the battery. So many high-end phones, that cost hundreds of dollars, built-in battery, so I really appreciate that. Not all budget devices are guaranteed to have a removable battery. All right, well, that's about all I have to say about this phone, the Coolpad Canvas from Cricket Wireless. And since it just came out this month, I really wanted to get a video up about it because there's only a few videos right now on YouTube. I really feel like this phone is absolutely worth $50. I feel like it's worth more than $50. So the fact that it's only $50 for what you're getting, phenomenal. Coolpad has a very, very bright future ahead of them, becoming a more well-known name brand, and from what I've read, that's exactly what they're gunning for, and they are on the absolute right track. If people can get past the fact that this is only $50 and actually give it a chance, and just, they're going to be blown away. I promise you're going to be blown away for the price. Obviously, if this was a $100 phone, it would still be a solid phone, but I wouldn't be as blown away because the value wouldn't be as much. But honestly, the fact that they can pack this much punch, this much value, this much quality into a phone that only costs $50, they've got my attention, and I'm definitely going to be watching the phones that they release in the future. I mean, if you break this phone, you can literally just throw it away and go buy another one. And I mean, besides any lost data that hopefully you had backed up on your SD card or something, um, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Like, even if, I don't believe there's any cases available for this right now because it's so new, at least not that I've seen. So, worst case scenario, you buy it, you drop it, you break it, you go buy another one. But otherwise, just be careful, It's a great phone. Check it out. This is my first phone review, so if I missed anything, leave me some comments. Ask me questions, whatever you want. I could certainly answer them for you, because I'm not going to return this. I'm keeping this. I love it. So this is going to be my daily driver phone. So if anybody needs help with anything or is wondering about anything that maybe I just didn't think to add to this video, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that I'm able to.